the turning point. Massachusetts is very proud to have brought that suit in order to protect our coastlines from the danger of greenhouse gases. And now, once again, all of that could be endangered. So I want to thank the Climate Action Campaign, the NRDC, EDF, Moms Clean Air Force, American Lung Association, the American Public Health Association, and We Act for all of your work that you're doing in order to protect our country. Thank you for being here today to fight back against yet another attempt by the Trump administration to take away our rights to clean air, to clean water, and healthy communities all across our country. According to recent reports, the Environmental Protection Agency Administrator Lee Zeldin told the White House this week that he wants to eliminate EPA's authority to regulate dangerous greenhouse gases based on the threat they pose to public health or welfare, known as the endangerment finding. If the Trump administration wants to say that climate-fueled hurricanes, wildfires, record-breaking heat, and droughts aren't a danger to our country, then this administration itself is a danger to our country every day of the week. Last month, I questioned Lee Zeldin on this exact issue. I knew he wouldn't have the courage to stand up to Trump's big oil and big gas donors. If those donors tell Zeldin to wipe away policies that protect public health and the planet, we know he's standing by with an eraser, regardless of the science, regardless of the law, regardless of the well-being of the American people. And now Zeldin is reportedly going after the result of the landmark Supreme Court case, Massachusetts versus the EPA, driven by the devastation that climate change has wreaked on my home state of Massachusetts and our coastal communities. The Supreme Court agreed that the EPA was obligated to safeguard people from the actual and imminent threat that greenhouse gases pose to people everywhere. This meant that greenhouse gases had to be regulated as air pollutants under the Clean Air Act. The EPA could not disprove the connection between greenhouse gases and climate change then. What makes Lee Zeldin think he can do it now? If Trump and his lackeys at the EPA go ahead with their attempt to challenge the endangerment finding, the Trump administration will be creating a clear and present danger to the public because climate denial costs lives, American lives. Just ask the people in Georgia and North Carolina still reeling from the hurricanes last year. Just ask the people who lost their homes or their loved ones in the Los Angeles wildfires earlier this year. Just ask families across the country who look at their skyrocketing home heating bills, their skyrocketing insurance bills, and wonder how they're going to keep their homes safe in a crisis and keep food on the tables. Administrator Zeldin is like the mayor in the movie Jaws. He keeps trying to tell people it's all clear to get back in the water. Don't worry. But in the 16 years since the endangerment finding was first established, we know people are not safe. There's blood in the water and more sharks than ever before being created by the fossil fuel industry. Trump and Musk and Republicans are taking a chainsaw to American democracy, a chainsaw to our clean air, a chainsaw to our clean water, a chainsaw to a livable future. And all the fossil fuel companies and all of Trump's donors can make billions of additional dollars at the expense of that clean air and clean water. And they're taking a chainsaw to clean air and clean water and climate change protections that should be put in place. That's what the chainsaw is all about. And then to use the funding from the EPA, and Trump yesterday said he wants to cut 65% of the workers at the EPA. Just take a chainsaw to all the work they're doing on clean air and clean water and climate change. That's what this threat is all about. It's about this chainsaw. The real danger that Trump and Zeldin want to fight is a danger to the bottom line of the fossil fuel industry. It's their business model that is endangered. That's why they're doing this. Those companies don't want to have to cut pollution. They want to be able to cut investments in clean energy investments that would help families reduce their energy bills. And just today, BP today announced they plan to axe investments in renewable energy and increase annual oil and gas spending to $10 billion. So no matter what they say, this administration's energy agenda isn't all of the above. It's oil above all. They want to turn the EPA into every polluter's ally. That's their goal. Slash 2/3 of the workers, slash their budget, and then repeal the endangerment finding, and all these companies make more money. That's what this thing is all about. Trump and Elon's dream of EPA standing for every polluter's ally. So that's where we are. We've got a chance to do something about it because we're going to fight. We're going to fight hard, and there's no harder fighter than my great friend and great leader from the state of Oregon, Jeff Merkley. Welcome, Jeff.
Well, certainly I can tell you that the people of Oregon are endangered. Our timber industry is endangered by the pine beetles, driven by the greater droughts that are destroying broad swaths of forest. Our ranchers are endangered by those same droughts and the dropping groundwater. Our farmers are endangered by the loss of irrigation water because the snowpack in the Cascade Mountains has dropped roughly 50% over the last 100 years. Our fishermen who love our trout and salmon streams are endangered by the lower level of water and the higher temperatures in those streams affecting the trout and the salmon. And we have the most productive offshore fishery virtually in the world with the California curd and the Pacific upwelling. We have all kinds of things that are connected to the environment in which climate is threatening because the water is more acidic, becoming carbonic acid from carbon dioxide, because it's warmer, and because we have a set of diseases triggered by that warmer, more acidic, that's wiping out our kelp forests, which are so critical to those fisheries. Everywhere you look, the people of Oregon are endangered. And anywhere you travel in this country, you will find similar stories. Perhaps in Houston, it's the repeated flooding and hurricanes. Perhaps in Iowa, it's the flash floods. Perhaps in Nebraska, it's the tornadoes. But everywhere you look, the earth is changing in just a short period of 2 decades. You can measure it. So only a completely ignorant or duplicitedly dangerous individual would try to tear down the endangerment finding. That is why we have to stand together. That's why I applaud all of these groups and my colleagues from the House and Senate who are saying we have a responsibility to the people of the United States of America to stand with them, not stand with the oil companies. I don't know a single member of Congress who took an oath to the oil companies, but they are the puppet master controlling the Republicans in the House and Senate. And when those puppet masters say jump, they're responding, how high? Well, we're saying hell no. Thank you.
Beautiful, beautiful job. And Senator Merkley's right. We have great leaders over from the House, led by Representative Don Beyer from Virginia. Welcome, Don.
Thank you, Senator, very much. I have to confess, one of my favorite movies was Furiosa, because it was a fantasy, because it wasn't real, and it was just something that you can enjoy on television. But it's been the great tragedy of our republic to have so many Republicans politicizing climate change. politicizing it when there is almost universal agreement from the scientific community that greenhouse gases are causing a climate crisis. And now we're being asked by the Musk-Trump administration to deny what we see with our own eyes. The LA fires, the flooding in Appalachia, the hurricanes in Florida. We are seeing how greenhouse gases are currently making our climate worse every day. The EPA's endangerment fireman is the simple truth, recognizing what the scientific community has known for decades, that greenhouse gases are a threat to public health and welfare. We know that the Musk-Trump administration's priority is to themselves and to their billionaire donors. But we also know who pays when the administration fulfills the fossil fuel industry's wish list: the American public. Shutting down the endangerment finding is the single most devastating action this administration can take right now to destroy the future for our children and grandchildren. Greenhouse gases are air pollutants, and EPA has a long history of regulating air pollutants. The body record is clear. The EPA has the authority here, and that science is overwhelmingly clear. And nothing short of pandering to fossil fuel polluters can make this untrue. If Lee Zeldin and the EPA rescinds the endangerment finding, I know the history books are going to talk about who created our Mad Max future. I'm here today to make sure that our constituents know we did not stay silent. And the leadership of the Sustainable Energy and Environment Coalition in the House, the largest environmental coalition that Jeff and Ed were part of in the years past, is organized in the House to stand up to Lee Zeldin, whose duty as EPA administrator is to preserve the American public from pollution, to follow his word, and to preserve the endangerment finding. Thank you.
Excellent job. And now, great climate leader Sean Casten from Illinois.
Thank you so much to my colleagues for all your leadership, Senator Markey for putting this together. I wish I could fly. I wish I could read your minds. I wish I could shoot laser beams out of my eyes. I wish I could teleport across the world. It'd make my travel home easier. And if I convinced all of my colleagues to pass a law tomorrow to grant me those powers, you would be completely right to call me certifiably insane. You should have me committed. You should say much worse things about me. You should make it very clear that someone who thinks you can use the laws of the United States to change the laws of nature is completely unfit for public service, should be scorned, should be mocked. His grandchildren should be forced to change their name out of embarrassment with how much he has humiliated the American people. And yet here we are today with the White House and Lee Zeldin, who have apparently decided that by acts of the United States law, they can change the laws of nature. Let's understand the facts here, right? Humanity as a species has been around in this sort of shape for about 100,000 years. The first fire that our ancestors ever built was about 1 million years ago. 50% of all the CO2 we have ever emitted as a species has been since 1995. We know that when you add CO2 to the atmosphere, it causes the temperature to go up. If you don't believe the EPA, I would refer you to the scientists at ExxonMobil who were very clear about that back in the 70s. We know that that rising temperature is responsible for the desertification of northern Africa that's causing huge dislocations of people that are straining economies in Europe. We know it's responsible for the surge in hurricanes. We know it's responsible for the surge in wildfires. We know it's responsible for the economic dislocation as insurance companies pull out of places like California and Florida, causing people like Ron DeSantis to suddenly embrace socialism so that they can bail out and try to sustain an economy that's collapsing because it depends on property values. All of that stuff is real. We can either deal with this as adults, as responsible public citizens, leaving this planet a little better than we found it for the next generation, or we can pretend that we are gods and embarrass our grandchildren. And my biggest ask for all of you is to please go out and use your voices to embarrass the hell out of Lee Zeldin, Donald Trump, and everybody else who misunderstands the gravity of this moment. Thank you.
Beautiful. Great job, Sean. Appreciate it. Yeah, Sean is right. Donald Trump is an example of evolution in reverse. He's like become Neanderthal man without a full understanding of what happened to all those previous generations because they missed what was happening to their climates. So now we have next great leader we have, Representative Maxine Dexter from Oregon.
I want to just acknowledge the strong showing from Oregon here. It is because Oregon is front and center in the climate crisis as well as advocacy. We look to emulate our Massachusetts forefathers in that regard. I am a mother, first and foremost. And the reason I ran for office years ago was because my children were having night terrors about the climate crisis. We cannot kick this ball forward, and what is happening right now is absolutely a devastation to the work that has been done for decades by Senator Markey and so many others. I am also a physician. I'm a lung doctor. I take care of people who are impacted by pollution, by heat and smoke exposure, and I know firsthand that that issue is not impacting everyone equally. It is impacting our Black, brown, and underprivileged communities far greater than any other. This is not just a climate crisis that impacts all of us, it is disproportionately impacting the most marginalized and vulnerable. And now I'm also proud to be a lawmaker, and my community continues to be ravaged by wildfires and other climate-fueled disasters. And it is our responsibility to take action in this moment. And yet, Donald Trump wants to gut the EPA and reverse the endangerment findings and undermine our bedrock environmental laws that impact our Clean Air Act and Clean Water Act. These laws protect us against pollution, against cancer, and against other illnesses that we are yet to see. Simply put, the Trump administration, led by Elon Musk, is trying to fire the people who protect us all so that they can benefit. Trump's assault on the EPA is about giving polluters a free pass. We will use every tactic at our disposal to push back, and this multi-front battle depends on you all, depends on us standing with you all as we fight back and stay loud, maintain the public pressure, and do not take anything but protection for our environment as an answer. Thank you.
Great job. Thank you so much. Yeah, there's no question. Donald Trump's fantasy is a nightmare for the children in our country, and that's why we're here. Next, we're going to hear Oregon, the great Suzanne Bonamici. Welcome, Suzanne.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you for your leadership. Like my great colleague, Congresswoman Maxine Dexter, I'm also a mom. And the year my first child was born, I was home with an infant. And right here at the U.S. Capitol, a NASA scientist testified, climate change is real, it's anthropogenic, it's caused by humans, and we need to act. That was 36 years ago. But now, today, Trump's EPA is trashing the tools we have to fight climate change and working to undo this cornerstone of climate protection, EPA's greenhouse gas endangerment finding. And I tell you, this is a reckless move, and it's going to have profound consequences for Oregonians and for people across the country, and not just in blue states and blue districts across the country. It's not just an attack on the environment, it's an attack on science, an attack on the health of children, seniors, vulnerable communities, and an attack on the planet. This endangerment finding is extremely consequential. It recognizes the truth that greenhouse gases pose a direct threat to public health and the environment. And by repealing this, by trashing this critical finding, the Trump administration is lying to you. The science is irrefutable. Greenhouse gases contribute to rising temperatures, extreme weather events, air pollution, and sea level rise. And Oregon, as you have heard from my amazing colleagues, has already experienced record-breaking wildfires. In 2020, it scorched our state and forced thousands of Oregonians from their homes. The fires destroyed entire communities, burned crops, killed livestock, and created an air quality crisis that sent residents scrambling for masks and air purifiers. You just could not escape the smoke. And then the year after that, in 2021, we had a heat dome and the hottest summer on record. Farmers were left grappling with extreme drought condition that devastated their crops. We cannot ignore these realities. And yes, Oregon is vulnerable, but an attack on the endangerment finding is not just going to attack Oregon. It's going to hurt people in red districts and states and rural areas across the country. And in Republican districts, families are already grappling with flooding, crop loss, rising healthcare costs, with air pollution and heat, and this rollback is going to make it even harder. So we're seeing a pattern here. The Trump administration has a climate denial agenda that undermines the health and safety of every American. And without the endangerment finding, the EPA could lose the legal authority to regulate carbon pollution. That is the wrong direction for our country and our planet. It would mean no more safeguards to limit emissions from power plants and factories and vehicles. No real plan to combat rising temperatures and worsening air quality. And the bottom line, more pollution, more extreme weather events, and more threats to public health. It's a rejection of the will of the people as well. That people have made it clear time and time again, they want action and they want it now. So we cannot and must not allow this to happen. I don't accept this. Oregonians don't accept it. The Sustainable Energy and Environment Coalition certainly doesn't accept it, and nor do the American people. So this is a moment that will define our future. Donald Trump and his crony cabinet are ignoring the science, but the American people are not. As we see temperatures rise and sea levels rise and wildfires spread, we know that this administration cannot continue to lie to the American people, that the climate crisis isn't here, because we know the truth. And we will not stop fighting to protect public health, to protect the environment, and to protect the planet. Thank you.
Great job. Thank you so much. Massachusetts versus EPA, 5-4 decision in the Supreme Court. It ordered the EPA to make a determination as to whether or not greenhouse gases endangers the United States, and as a result, the rest of the world. The leading legal expert in our country on that endangerment finding is with us today. David Donner, Senior Attorney and Strategist at the NRDC. Welcome, David.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Markey, and the senators and congressmen who are here. Thank you very much. I want to just make a few quick points. You know, this is crazy. The fires, the embers of the fires in LA are barely out. People are struggling there. People are still struggling to recover their homes and their livelihoods in North Carolina. And here we have the Trump administration telling the country's oil, gas, and coal magnates that they are free to keep spewing dangerous pollution into the atmosphere. Now, the evidence behind the endangerment finding is a mountain of evidence. It was Denali-sized 15 years ago. Denali is not just a mountain in Alaska. But now it's Mount Everest size because the information just keeps getting more and more data, and more that people see it, you know, not as something far away and in the future, but outside their front doors and or burning down their front doors. Now, the courts have repeatedly upheld EPA's legal authority and its scientific conclusions, and if EPA goes through with this, we'll see them in court, and I'm very confident that it won't stand. I'd like to point out that yesterday, two of the biggest trade associations, the Edison Electric Institute and the American Petroleum Institute, went on the record saying that they're against this. Well, their reasons are not exactly poor, because as long as EPA has authority to regulate carbon pollution, they feel they have some insurance against common law lawsuits. I'm not sure they do, but they think this endangerment finding actually provides them some protection, and they want EPA to have standards, although they would probably like them to be weaker than they have been. But, you know, welcome to the resistance, EEI and API. So, as I said, we've been at this for decades, and I've been involved in all the lawsuits. We win them over and over again. The Supreme Court has ruled 4 times that EPA has this authority. And I don't think that this will succeed if they carry on. But we have to fight these guys, and we will. So thank you very much.
David. Thank you. We will win, because we will fight. Next, we're going to hear from Stephanie Reese, Director of Strategic Implementation and Justice at Mom's Clean Air Force. Welcome.
I want to thank Senator Markey for your leadership and the opportunity to speak today. I want to say good afternoon. My name is Stephanie Reese, and I am here today as a member of Moms Clean Air Force, where 1.5 million moms and caregivers advocate every day for clean air for children across the country. I'm also here today as a mother of 2 young boys, and like you, I care about the health of our planet, and I worry about global warming. I want to breathe clean air, and I want my sons to breathe clean air. Unfortunately, Administrator Zeldin does not seem to care about these things. Over 15 years ago, EPA determined that greenhouse gases threaten public health. This decision was in line with the U.S. Supreme Court ruling, upheld fundamental scientific findings, and acknowledged what we know to be true: fossil fuel pollution hurts families. Look around. Families across the country are experiencing extreme weather fueled by climate emissions. And with every increasingly intense wildfire, hurricane, flood, and heat wave, the danger becomes more urgent and personal. Consider summers that have become too hot for our children to play, the lifetime trauma of losing a home in a flood or fire that is quickly becoming reality for many across our great country. Administrator Zeldin's recommendation to overturn the endangerment finding yesterday will do nothing for clean air, but it will bolster the billions of dollars of profit being made by the oil and gas industries at the expense of our children's safety. To be clear, Zeldin has stated that his EPA will focus on energy dominance, distorting EPA's mission to protect the environment and human health. Let me say that again. The EPA's mission is to protect the environment and human health. If Zeldin succeeds in steering the EPA off course, he is condemning us and our children and the future of his children to longer and more intense heat waves, to more extreme storms and relentless wildfire seasons that bring with them unbreathable and deadly air. If that's not bad enough, his extremely misplaced priorities will drive up costs, making everything in our lives more expensive. Many, if not most of us, already feel the strain as the cost of food, housing, medicine, hospital bills, health insurance, home insurance, and construction soar. On behalf of millions of moms who refuse to let our children suffer the cost of these reckless policies, I stand here today to tell you that we will work to make sure that Administrator Zeldin does not succeed in his perilous attempt to repeal EPA's endangerment findings. Our children's health and the future depend on our collective and individual actions to protect clean air. In his nomination hearing, Zeldin promised to follow the science, to respect the science. We must hold him accountable to that pledge. He must keep EPA on course and rein in climate and air pollution. To do otherwise is a cynical and shameful betrayal, one that history will not forget. Thank you.
Great job. Great job. Thank you so much. Right on point. And we just have a cast of leaders who are here today who are all saying over and over again, Donald Trump and Elon Musk don't want to safeguard American families from climate change. They want to guard the safes of the oil and gas and coal industry and their profits. That's what this whole thing is about. Next, Joanna Slaney, Associate Vice President of Political Affairs at the Environmental Defense Fund. Welcome.
Thank you, Senator. Joanna Slaney from Environmental Defense Fund. As we've seen from California to North Carolina, any community can be torn apart by the extreme weather that climate pollution is intensifying. The endangerment finding is the foundation for all the work we need to do to protect people in every community across the country. Administrator Zeldin's actions are both cynical and deeply concerning. That's because a mountain of scientific evidence supports the finding. EPA has a clear legal obligation to protect every American's health and welfare. And we are experiencing the devastating harms of a changing climate right now. Hurricane Helene last year alone led to more than 230 deaths across 6 states and cost the nation roughly $80 billion. And the recent Los Angeles wildfires killed at least 28 people, displaced thousands, and destroyed more than 16,000 structures with an estimated cost of more than $250 billion. So grounded in science, law, and the everyday experience of millions of Americans, the endangerment finding is critically important because it empowers EPA to do its job. There is no question about the endangerment finding's continued applicability. Since adopting it, EPA has taken common sense steps to reduce climate pollution from large sources like power plants, cars and trucks, and oil and gas operations. These actions have been enormously successful in reducing pollution and delivering immediate health benefits to Americans across the country. It is vital that these common sense measures remain in place. EPA has a fundamental responsibility to protect Americans from destructive climate pollution. Any effort to strike down the finding would be reckless and unlawful, and we will vigorously oppose it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next, we're going to hear from Laura Kate Bender, Assistant Vice President, Nationwide Healthy Air at American Lung Association. Welcome.
Thank you so much. My name is Laura Kate Bender. I'm Assistant Vice President for Nationwide Healthy Air at the American Lung Association. My organization's mission is to save lives by improving lung health and preventing lung disease. We teach kids how to manage their asthma. We help people who have been diagnosed with lung cancer. We run trainings to help people quit tobacco. And we advocate. We push for policies that makes people's lungs healthier. That includes measures that reduce air pollutants that harm health, including greenhouse gases. Climate change is a health emergency. The endangerment finding that carbon dioxide, methane, and other climate-driving pollutants endanger public health has been settled for decades. At the Lung Association, everything we advocate for is based in science. And in this case, the science is beyond clear. That's why this finding has held up in court and survived presidential administrations of both parties. It's why the Lung Association intervened in the case to defend the finding when it was last challenged in court, a case in which the court rejected the challenge. And people get it because they're living it. I've heard healthcare providers time and again share the impacts they're seeing in their clinics. NICUs are filling up with lower birth weight babies during wildfire season. Parents are bringing in infants with symptoms of dehydration from the heat. Student athletes are getting asthma attacks on days with high ozone. Construction workers are getting sick from the combined impacts of high heat and poor air quality. I have asthma. I know how scary it is to go to the emergency department for an asthma attack when you're a kid. As a parent, I also know how scary it is to have a young child hospitalized for an illness. In my case, my child's illness was Lyme disease, which is spreading due to climate change. Fortunately, the health community celebrated major wins in 2023 and 2024 with updated pollution standards from the Environmental Protection Agency. This includes measures to reduce methane emissions from the oil and gas industry, make sure future cars and trucks emit fewer greenhouse gases, clean up emissions from power plants. These protections are crucial for protecting people's health from climate change. They also have additional huge health benefits because they reduce other air pollutants at the same time. These standards are literally life-saving. When it comes to protecting people from pollutants like carbon dioxide and methane, EPA doesn't just have the ability to act. They have the responsibility to act. For decades, the Lung Association has put a high priority on making sure they do. The endangerment finding that underlies these standards is deeply rooted in both the science and the law. For the sake of people's health, it must remain in place. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. And now we're going to hear from George Benjamin, Executive Director of the American Public Health Association.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm a physician, and I'm at the American Public Health Association. And I want to speak directly to the American people, because I want you to understand that climate change is here today and is impacting your health today. That's very important for you to understand. You are being injured and damaged each and every day, and so are your kids. I also want you to understand that the issues around greenhouse gases is settled science. This is not debatable stuff. There are hundreds and hundreds of studies that have shown the risk and the impact of greenhouse gases on our health each and every day, even for the unborn. I want you to also understand that you should believe your eyes. Wildfires, hurricanes, more snow than we've had before in places that didn't get a lot of snow, more ice in places that we didn't get, rising sea level, floods. Those things are real, and they're made worse by climate change. And then finally, I'm going to give you something to do. Those of you who are in the social media space, I want you to engage our elected officials. I want you to engage your colleagues. And I want you to send a note that says, "We want clean air. Do not reverse the endangerment finding." Then I want you to get on the phone and I want you to write or call your elected leaders, both locally and nationally, and tell them that you do not want the endangerment finding reversed. It's not a complicated message. We want clean air. And then finally, there's a house down the street built by people that look like me at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. And the way to do this is you should say, President Donald J. Trump, 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, the White House. And you don't even need the zip code. You can look it up. You don't need it. It'll get there. And I want you to say, do not reverse the endangerment finding. We want clean air, Mr. President. You work for us. We want to live. We want to make sure that we address climate change. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you. I've known Dr. Benjamin for 30 years. Never been more proud of him than today. He just wrote out the prescription. And it's a political prescription, let's be honest. That's what we have to do. We have to take action. We have to work. We're going to have to fight. You know, Donald Trump wants to take the mission at the EPA to protect the American people from climate change and turn it into mission impossible. And sometimes we think that that's what he thinks he's writing, a movie script down at the White House. But it has real life implications for every one of us, and I can't thank you, Dr. Benjamin, enough for bringing all those public health concerns. And now we're going to hear from Manny Salgado, Federal Research Manager at We Act for Environmental Justice.
Thank you, Senator. My name is Manuel Salgado. I am Federal Research Manager at We Act for Environmental Justice. I am a climate scientist. I have training in atmospheric science and snow hydrology. At an environmental justice organization, we see the effects of climate change on a daily basis. We see it in a historically black community like Altadena, California, where entire families lose their homes due to a CO2-fueled firestorm. We also see it in the rural mountain communities of North Carolina, some of the poorest in the nation, when a hurricane comes through and drops incredible amounts of historic rainfall hundreds of miles away from the nearest coastline, and families lose everything, including their homes and for many their lives. We see it in black and brown communities in Houston, Texas, who after a hurricane may go weeks or even months without any power while their white affluent neighbors have been restored long before. You know, we see these effects of the climate crisis throughout the nation. Every day there are poor communities and communities of color and communities of frontline who bear the brunt of these climate disasters. And while these communities suffer the consequences, the oil and gas companies that are driving these disasters record record profits over and over and over again. And let's be really clear about what this effort to repeal the endangerment finding really is. This is Donald Trump delivering on the promise that he made last April at a dinner party to oil and gas execs to deliver on the $1 billion that they raised for him at that time. You know, for far too long, environmental justice communities have been the sacrifice zones so that polluters can go unchecked and the rich can become richer. We just can't afford to bury our heads in the sand any longer about the dangers that greenhouse gas emissions have driving the impacts of climate change, like historic hurricanes, like these disastrous wildfires and catastrophic flooding. Once again, Donald Trump is making this happen for one reason and one reason only, to make good on his promise to his polluter friends. This is about defining who we are as a country. Do we want to be a country that protects equality under the law, civil rights, and the right for everyone to safety, health, and a livable future? We are very happy to stand by our congressional allies and our nonprofit allies here, and we're going to continue to fight for the right of EJ communities to live in a climate crisis-free future. Thank you.
Thank you, Manny. Senator Markey had to run, so he wanted me to just to take the floor and see if there are any questions. We still have many of our experts here, and if there are any questions, they'll be happy to take them. Okay, if not, I want to thank you very much for being here, and go climate. Yes.